I know that you all have all taken out time from children practices, a lot of work to be with us today on a very, very pertinent topic. And I've had parallel discussions with each of y'all on our millennial moms or parents rather raising fussy eaters. And what I love about this very, very specially curated panel is, and each one of your journeys is, I personally follow, and I'm sure everybody here follows as well, is we're all a sandwich generation between Google sort of parenting or Kidsstoppress sort of parenting, which is digital, to to raising our kids the way our grandparents or our moms have raised us, and so does the food practice come, right? So I think that was one of the biggest reasons why we thought this was an interesting conversation to have. And of course, our kids have so many more choices than we ever had, and that makes decision making even more tough. Today we have with us Chinu. And I was just discussing with her how should I introduce her. So I'm going to call her as a creator, founder of Guy Gourmet. She's a chef and mom to Zanu. Thank you, Chinu, for being with us.
My pleasure.
We have Dr. Manjari Rao Kapadia, and she's of course a lifesaver for me, but I'm going to also introduce her as a homeopath and a gut expert, and of course a mom to two as well. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you for always
Thank you, Mansi. I appreciate it.
We also have Thara Shenoy, who's a pediatric feeding therapist. Thank you, Thara, for being with us here today.
Thank you so much, Mansi. Glad to be a part of this.
Right. I've said enough, but a really startling fact that I shared earlier on Kidsstoppress this week was, in a study recently published, they said that that by 2025 there'll be 17 million obese kids in India, and this is, of course, horrifying, but this is the truth. I just hope we have very little role to play and very informed role to play. And I just want to throw open the panel. As a doctor, you get a lot of questions about what to do with my child. He or she doesn't eat what I serve. And more importantly, will it have any repercussions if he or she doesn't eat? And especially long-term impact, because you obviously track a whole lot of history when you're seeing patients. What's your take, and what are the typical questions that you're bombarded with?
So it starts with firstly identifying what age group they come from. Okay. And I do not like the title of fussy or picky at all, because I don't think children are fussy or picky. I think they behave in a certain way with regards to food due to what is happening to them in their system. First question would be, what has changed lately? Has anything changed in the family? Has anything changed with the child's health? Has the child been ill for a while? Let's say had a fever a month ago, and after that the pattern has changed. So we try and identify the connecting link between the events that have happened, which has led to this child becoming fussy. So pretty much the constant rhetoric I will hear is, she was fine, she used to eat so well, I don't know what happened to her all of a sudden. Maybe it's the grandparents, maybe it's the new school or whatever. It's never some of the other factors. The other factors would probably play a much smaller role. The bigger factors is what's actually happening inside their bodies. And that is where I play a role, where I try and identify what it is that has happened, which has led to this event occurring.
How are you managing between what you cook at home, what you do professionally, and do you find it to be a struggle?
Firstly, what I do professionally and what I cook at home has nothing to do with each other, because my daughter, of course, some days, like randomly, we might make a truffle pasta and give it to her to try. Or the other day, she tried a morel mushroom for the first time, which was hugely exciting for us. But firstly, I agree with Dr. Rao that fussy or picky kids, I mean, we forget that they have free will and they are people, little people, who arrived very complying, but then are developing their own. Like, I still make a face if I see dudhi on a plate. Like, I hate it. I don't want to eat it. So just because we are putting in so much like Instagram research and Pinterest and this and that and composing these fantastic meals for them, it's actually us who are getting offended that they are not appreciating our hard work. It has nothing to do with them. My daughter ate bindi for a year and nothing else. And I was like, okay, now what to do? So I think it's phases, it's conditioning, it's also a lot of like, not just to do with food, but are they being raised very entitled? Are you offering them a menu full of options if they don't eat one? We did that. We were like, oh, you don't like this? You want this? We can just whip it up. Like, what have we done to encourage this kind of behavior is something I would say is good to look at.
Right. Thara, over to you. And the same question that I asked Dr. Rao. What are the questions that you are most often bombarded with, and what you get most frequently asked?
Yes, Mansi. So most often parents are very, very anxious. That's the problem, that my child is not eating enough, the portion size, or my child is not eating vegetables, trying new foods. All these questions are like, very, very common. I keep getting this. One thing to know here is our expectation of how much a child should eat is very, very different from what actually their body needs. Now, you want your child to finish that one bowl of rice. That might not be what your child's body needs, right? And you just want to finish that, and you just, distract the child. You just stuff it inside the mouth. Obviously, the child is going to get aversion towards food, right? Now, like Dr. Rao said, and like Chinu also said, picky eating is a term which I would not like to use at all, because there will be phases where kids do eat less, or the quantity is less, or they hesitate to try new food. All these are for a reason. Now, their eating habits, whatever, they're not eating much, or they are not trying food, or aversion towards food, is because it's for a reason. Definitely there will be underlying issues. So understanding that is very, very important, rather than distract feeding, force feeding. This is not going to help at all.
Right. Dr. Rao, when you mention about there are certain life events that happen that causes this disturbance in the pattern, what are those typical things that parents should watch out for that has happened? Or if they can't associate anything with that typical event, and I mean, if I was to go back, I mean, they were eating everything, and then I don't know what happened, or what did I do wrong, or what conspired. And you can't point a finger to something specific. Then, I mean, so two questions. One is, what could be those significant life events? And the second, if there's nothing like that you can point towards, then what could it be?
So first of all, to start with, when they are growing, they go through phases. And during each phase, because the brain is growing as well, the quantity of saliva, the antibodies within the saliva, the quantity of gastric juice, the antibodies in the antibodies overall, and when they are vaccinated, they're producing humongous amount of antibodies to different viruses. Then their microbiome, their gut bacteria, when they are born, they're wholly reliant on the mother's breastfeed and the fact that they get it from being breastfed, or even if they're having bottle. Anyhow, that is the time when all of these changes are taking place. So it's not a static process. It's a highly dynamic process which will change on a daily basis. It's not like it's a change that comes quarterly or half yearly. It comes on a daily basis. As a result, if they do well on one day, they may not do well on another day, but we don't look at the quantum of food eaten. We look at whether they are smiling. I used to work with a pediatrician, a senior pediatrician in Asha Parekh Hospital in Bombay. We would see like 100 patients in the OPD. Literally, she would finish the OPD in 1 hour, and each mother with the child would say, "Jao, jao, jao." At the end of 1 month, I got frustrated. I said, I haven't learned anything from this woman. She's not saying anything. She's saying "jao" to everybody, and she's screaming at those who are giving their children Cerelac. So finally, I mustered the courage. She was so senior. She said the child was smiling. That bulgum doesn't matter. The fact that he's not eating doesn't matter. That potty doesn't matter. Just let them go. The child is smiling. So we see the parameters. Child is smiling. Child seems to be playing. Child is active. Let it be. The food is a variable that is only doing the supportive work. They are also getting nourishment from your love, from the family situation, from the environment around them, how much they are thriving looking at external stimulus. All those things matter. But we only look at the protein part of it or the quantum 250 ml. I receive big reports of parents 9 a.m. this, 9:30 a.m. this, 4 florets of broccoli and 2 strands of asparagus. And that's not correct, you know.
One of the most requested topics on Kidsstoppress is a menu for toddlers, and 9 a.m. this, 11 a.m. this, and guilty as charged, but we were so tired of responding to this request that we actually made that. But you're absolutely right, Chinu, with Zanu being only 4, and you've been just passing through that phase. Did you go through this phase where you're like, okay, 9 a.m. has to be this, 11 a.m. has to be this? Has she eaten so much broccoli, carb, protein, fiber, fat? Did you go crazy over it?
I mean, I am guilty of making elaborate menus every 6 months when I feel like, everyone's going crazy in the house and no one knows what to do. And I'm like, sit down, everyone, and tell me what you like and stuff like that. I think the only time I wrote stuff down with Zanu was initially when I was breastfeeding her. After that, no, I don't think we've ever followed. I don't believe in food like that. Like Dr. Rao was saying, this protein and carb and how much she was never a big eater, but she was always a happy baby. And she seemed like she was enjoying what she was doing. What happened was, I mean, like you're saying, we don't know what causes them to suddenly change. Now, in retrospect, I'm kind of guessing it was around the time when I weaned her when she was 14 months old and she suddenly had access to unlimited milk, like in a bottle. She stopped eating. And then I realized later that she actually it was just too convenient for her, like all her baby-led weaning and sitting on a high chair and chomping on asparagus just stopped. And she was mobile suddenly, so she didn't want to sit on the high chair. She had access to all this doo-doo, which she didn't with me because it was a limited amount. And then for about like a good 6 months, she didn't eat any vegetable but bindi. And then there stopped all my Instagram videos of like her eating by herself and all of that. But like, I mean, as long as she was eating something, she was eating a chapati, she was eating bindi, she ate cherry tomatoes and she ate fish and she ate rice. And that's what she ate. And then again, it started changing when her body started changing again, when she turned 2.5. Again, things started coming back, a little bit of adventure in what she was eating and a little bit of more exploration. And she's still not like, oh my God, I'll try everything. I've seen kids who just literally are excited about food and will try anything. That's just not her personality. It has nothing to do with the food we are offering or what she wants to eat. That's who she is. She's cautious. She's an observer, So you have to get to know who your kid is beyond just what they're eating.
Right. Thara, I'm going to flip the question over to you. That do parents come to you with specific concern that, oh, my child is not eating fruits, or my child is not eating any vegetables, or my child is not eating broccoli? And then what would that solution or what would your response be to them?
Yes, Mansi. I would also like to add one point to what you asked Chinu and Dr. Rao, that why suddenly parents, my child was eating fine, absolutely fine, and suddenly my child doesn't eat anymore. Why does that happen? Now, one thing what happens is every child, 80 to 85% of the kids go through a phase of food neophobia. Okay, so food neophobia is fear of new food. So this happens around, say, 15 months or sometimes 1 year, that much, so 15 months. And for some kids, it might extend to, as long as 6 to 7 years. So this is when they feel that, till 1 year or 15 months, my baby was absolutely eating everything. And suddenly my baby has developed aversion towards food. The baby is rejecting everything. So it is a phase where, most kids go through this. It could be food neophobia. Now, how you deal with food neophobia when they are in this phase, that definitely matters how long it is going to last, how worse it is going to be. And, during their phase of food neophobia, you just force them to eat. Now, any parent comes to me, I tell them one thing, put yourself in your child's situation or put yourself in their shoes. Now, I give you something which you never ate, okay, maybe something, yeah, like some worms, insects, or whatever what others eat. I mean, in some parts of the world they do eat, but you have never seen this. It is new for you in your plate, and I just force you to eat it. I just shovel it into your mouth and force you to eat. Would meal times be pleasant for you? Wouldn't you be aversion towards meal time? So you might feel, okay, I am just giving, bhindi or beans to my child. Why is the child having aversion towards that? Come on, I'm not giving insects or worms or something. For your child, that can be yucky. I mean, that can be gross. Your beans might look very, very gross to your child because they are just learning to eat. Now, we are what? We have seen all this food for so many years. So for us, it might not be gross. For your child, it might be gross. So next time you force your child to, eat this bhindi or eat this beans, remember that somebody is forcing you to eat all these, whatever you don't eat. So that is how they feel, that is how anxious they feel.
Thara, to defend in defense of all the other mothers, our kids find all the vegetables very scary. They don't want to eat any of them. I think that's going to be the response there.
Yes. So what happens is, like you asked me that, parents, yes, do come to me saying my child doesn't even eat one vegetable or doesn't even eat fruit, right? So yes, I get this a lot. But what happens is a child's will to try a new food or a new vegetable or a new dish only comes by exposing them to that fruit or vegetable again and again and again and again and again. You don't say that my child doesn't eat bhindi and stop cooking bhindi altogether. No, that doesn't happen. So your job is to offer. Eating or not, they will decide, right? So each time you expose your child to this food, whatever that they're not eating, their brain is building new connections, right? So when that happens, they get more and more comfortable towards that food, even if they're going through this phase of food neophobia. So they get comfortable each time you expose them to that food. So keep doing it. Because your child is not eating one particular food, don't stop offering it to them.